I am so stoked to have my hands on these. I can't wait to try them. Hi friends, Shanna here from Caution Artists at Play, and if you saw my recent art haul video, then you know how excited I was to get my hands on the Discontinued Aquatone Pencils by Derwent. These are a water-soluble, woodless colored pencil, and sadly, they apparently don't make them anymore, and it's such a bummer because you know how I love my Derwent products. So I'm going to be playing around with them today. I want to try them out and kind of compare them with the other water-soluble Derwent products that I have. So I'm going to do a few swatches that way. I'm going to swatch them in general, and then I'm going to do a piece with them. My main goal with these is to be able to take these on the road when I go plein air painting. And so I just want to get a feel for them before I'm out in the field. And so that's what we're going to do today. So let's just get down to it. This vintage packaging is so much fun. I am beyond excited to try these. This is a set of 12, and I think it's got a pretty good variety of colors here. So there's ivory black, Venetian red, raw umber, sap green, emerald green, Prussian blue, light blue, dark violet, magenta, deep vermilion, middle chrome, and zinc yellow. So I'm starting off by swatching them. For this part, I am using the Strathmore 400 series mixed media paper. And it's a pretty thick paper. It's kind of like a cardstock almost, with just a slight texture on it. And it works pretty well for water-soluble pencils in general. So I'm going to lay them down dry first, and then I'm just going to come through with water, see how they activate, see how vibrant they are. And then later you're going to see me compare them in other swatches with some of the other water-soluble media by Derwent. And so far, the first impression is they're a little bit crumbly, but they're not too bad. They're not as smooth to lay down as some of the other water-soluble media I'm used to working with. Laying them dry on the paper almost makes them look like a crayon, but these are a woodless watercolor pencil. But they're a little bit waxier and give more of that texture than a regular pencil does too. And you'll see that a little bit when I'm comparing them to the other Derwent products. I am actually super happy with how well they blend out with water, though. I was really surprised considering the fact that they give that kind of crayon-y look when you lay them down dry. They really smoothed out very well with the water, and I think that they're really vibrant. I don't think I laid down enough of the light blue pigment, though, because I do have other swatches of that, and it definitely, the swatch isn't doing that color justice. So this is what it looks like dry. You can see where the water kind of went in and created some blooms. Now I'm bringing in my Derwent Inktense pencils so that I can swatch them alongside them to compare and see how they look with those. I'm also bringing in this product by Derwent, which is also discontinued, I believe. These are kind of like their Neocolor 2s. They're triangular shaped, but they are a water-soluble wax crayon, or wax pastel. And then I'm bringing in the classic watercolor pencils by Derwent as well, and this is just a 12 set. And I'm just going to grab a few colors from each that are similar in color. I'm not going to be exact about it, but I'm just laying them down, again, dry first, and then I'm going to come through with my water because I want to see how they blend out compared to each other. Now, looking here, you can see the art bar, which is essentially the crayon, is definitely really crumbly. The Aquatone is not as crumbly as those, but a little bit more crumbly than the Inktense and watercolor pencil. So there's a good comparison there. You can see the crumbs just coming off those crayons. The watercolor pencils have some crumbs coming off as well, but they're smaller and not as sticky as the art bar or the Aquatone. So they're easier to just kind of wipe away. However, you're going to see here the vibrancy and the saturation on the watercolor pencil does not compare to the others. Now, something that Derwent does really well is yellows. Any yellow product I've used from them, even in the watercolor pencil, which again, the watercolor pencils by far are not as vibrant, chef's kiss on the yellow. Like, they do yellows really well. But as you can see, the Aquatones are washing out really well. They're blending out beautifully, and they're pretty vibrant too. And the Inktense, of course, is the most vibrant of all. And the art bar, it depends on the color that you're using. but it washes away a lot more easily in terms of like lifting off the paper. The water gets to it really fast and it just doesn't keep its vibrancy the same way as the others. And again, the watercolor pencil is also not as vibrant. I have to say the smoothest ones to work with are the Inktense and the watercolor pencils though, just laying them down, with the Aquatone being in third place. And then the Art Bar was not smooth to lay down, but it still blended out pretty well. Now I'm doing a lift test. Inktense are known to be more permanent than the other water-soluble items on this list. However, if you still have enough down and it hasn't been washed out completely, there is still some lifting you can do. And I actually had to scrub at the Inktense quite a bit to get the amount of lifting I did. The Aquatone lifted pretty well, but not crazy. The Art Bar lifted, I think, the most, and then the watercolor pencil was really easy to lift. Now I have done the lift test on just the Derwent Aquatone, so you can kind of see here. That was me lifting it with a brush. Now I'm bringing in the Perfection Eraser by Faber-Castell. It's basically a pencil with an eraser inside, so you can sharpen it to a fine point. And since these are completely dry now, I am able to erase. So they can be lifted with water or erased when you need to make corrections. Now, of course, some colors are more easily lifted than others because some pigments stain more than others, so keep that in mind as well. Now, to work on my project. I'm bringing out the big guns as far as the paper goes. I have switched from my mixed media paper, and I am now working on Arch's 100% cotton hot press paper for this project because I want to give these the best chance that I can. And because this set does not have white, I will be bringing in an Inktense white pencil to try it out, and the Derwent Drawing Chinese White, which basically I use in every piece I ever do with pencil ever, just to try it out. So really my only complaint that I have about the color selection in this set is the fact that it didn't come with a white. The rest of the colors were highly mixable. You're going to see me use a lot of different techniques here, from drawing directly on the paper with a pencil and wetting it down after, to using a palette off to the side where I scribble on the palette and I pick it up with my wet brush and I bring it over like watercolor. And then I also wash down some of the shavings. Whenever I had to sharpen these pencils, I would sharpen it over my palette because all that pigment can still be used with water, even if it's not still attached to the pencil. So you'll see that later on. You're going to see my messy palette later on. She's a mess. She's got all kinds of shavings on her and all kinds of spots where I had watered things down, but I digress. So far in the background, I was really impressed. I'm loving the two greens that I needed. I brought in a few blues in the back, but I didn't really use the blues a whole lot in this piece, I must say. And I love the way the grass came out. I'm using a lot of the sap green for the darker areas, and then I'm coming in and darkening it even more with my black and getting those details in there for the shadow areas. And then I'm also coming over it with my lighter green and my yellow. Then I'm washing it out. I'm working section by section so that way there things don't run together. And it's also easier for me to keep track of where I am in the piece. When I have complicated things like grass and other crazy details, it's easier for me to work section by section so that it doesn't get overwhelming. And then once I've washed things out, I am coming through with the pencils dry for other details. So there you just saw me come in with my Inktense white, worked really well on these, and now I'm using that Derwent Drawing Chinese White for white, and that also worked phenomenally on them. Of course, with the Chinese white, you want to wait for the layers below to be dry, otherwise it could damage the paper, or because it's not a water-soluble pencil, you may not get the pencil to lay down as easily. The Derwent Inktense white, you could use it either with the paper wet or dry, though for the details I was looking for, I preferred it on the dry paper. Both worked great for details, though I think you could probably mix the white Inktense directly with the Aquatone. I feel like these may have been like an older sister to the Derwent Inktense. They were sold alongside each other for a while until these were discontinued. I honestly don't know. I thought these were much older. I was able to find an old color chart. I will pop that up here so you can see. So they did have Lightfast ratings on them, and it looks like they sold up to a 24 set, which doesn't surprise me because a lot of Derwent's smaller lines usually only go up to like 24. Like the Derwent drawing, for instance, which we all wish there was more colors, and the Derwent Graphitin only have 24 in the line. So I'm not really surprised that these only had 24 in the line. So I think they may have been available as a 12 set, a 24 set, and open stock in certain places, with, again, some Lightfast information available on them. Now, I'm not going to sell this particular piece because I didn't have the Lightfast information before I created it, and I used a lot of the colors, like almost all the colors in this set, and some of them aren't as Lightfast as others, which is to be expected. Overall, though, I don't think that the Lightfast ratings were too terrible. I think they were pretty average for a Derwent product, especially when you're looking at the full 24 range. And I am really happy with this set of 12. I think the color range is really good, especially considering it is a water-soluble product, so I'm able to mix any color that I need, which is great because I've been looking for something that I could take on the go that is water-soluble. I thought about bringing some of my Inktense, but I wanted a tin that I could just throw in my bag and not have to worry about deciding what colors I want to bring each time I go. I don't have a 12 set of Inktense. I only have larger sets, and they're all kind of thrown in my drawers together, so I would have to pick the colors. This way, the colors are already picked for me. I can just throw it in my bag, and I think they're going to be perfect for that. So I'm just cleaning up some of my edges. You saw me come in with a Prismacolor Kohl Erase pencil, and that was just to bring the details of the middle of the flower out. I am drawing yet another lily. I love my lilies. I draw them a lot on here, and there's something that I'm able to just freehand fairly easily, and so it's easy for me to use lilies as a starting point for when I'm reviewing any sort of materials. Now I'm coming in and I am using that palette method where I lay down my colors on the palette first, and then I pick them up with my wet brush and bring them over like watercolor. I'm using a mixture of my magenta and the violet color, and then I also bring in some browns later on for some of the shadows. And this means that it's going to be a little bit more faint at first because there's more water involved. See, there's my messy palette. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, and I'm using some vermilion there as well. I basically scribbled it on my palette, mixed the colors together with water, lifted it with my wet brush, and brought it over for my underpainting. I love doing a nice wishy-washy underpainting this way, and then coming in with my pencils for details. So now you're going to see me going back and forth between dry pencil and wet paintbrush. And I do come in later on with a few glazes here and there, again using the palette method. And I'm just paying close attention to the veins in those petals and the direction that they're going in. I am not being too precious about it because this is more about me getting to know these pencils and less about the piece itself. So I'm trying not to be a perfectionist here. This is just a fun, quick project to grease the wheels and get some experience with these pencils. Something that I was really pleased about is that it includes a magenta, a light blue, and just like a regular old yellow, because that's the color scheme that I use for primaries. I love the vibrancy you can get from mixing magenta, yellow, and cyan. And so the fact that it had all those colors in here, but it also had a regular red and a regular blue, made it really a very versatile set. And I love that. And even though I didn't use any of the cyan really in this, I think it's going to be great later on. If I'm in a pinch and I need to mix any color that I don't have here, I know I will be able to do that with those three primaries. And I do like the vermilion as well. It ears more on the orangey side though, so that could create some muddier mixes. So having the magenta is going to be wonderful for nice, clean mixes, both on the palette and on paper. And so I do think that they chose right when they chose the colors, even though I'm bummed that they don't have a white in the set. So you'll see me going back and forth to tighten up the details. I'm bringing in various colors, like I mentioned. I'm bringing in some of the browns in the shadow areas. You'll see me bring in the green again for the center of the flower. And I'm just working on the petals one by one. This reference was interesting. It was just a fun one that I took randomly when my husband and I were on a day trip. And I like the fact that the petals are not perfect. You're going to see a lot of wrinkles in these two big side petals. That was a fun little challenge to do, especially when I was trying to get it dark enough so that I wouldn't have to bring in black, because obviously I don't want to bring in black on these petals. But the thing is, with water-soluble products, they tend to dry a little bit lighter than when you lay them down. So that's always going to be the challenge. And I did end up making it work. I wanted these to be vibrant and still have the full value range represented so that I could have the contrast that I needed to make this flower pop. And also, I love the contrast between the green in the background and the pinks and reds of the flower. But that pink definitely did present a challenge when it came to the wrinkles, though there was some brown in the petals where they were starting to decay. So that helped me a little bit in adding the values to the wrinkles of those petals. Even though it looks a little bit muddy, some of that muddiness is intentional. As I mentioned during the swatching, they do tend to be a little bit crumbly, and some of those crumbs don't wash out all the way, and sometimes they stick to other parts of the paper. So I guess that would probably be my only real criticism of these, other than the fact that they're not available anymore. Bring them back. Let's go retro. But I can't complain because honestly, overall, I had a fantastic experience with them. I was able to layer in any way that I needed to. I was able to glaze. I didn't find them to be as permanent as Inktense, but as I mentioned earlier, you can still lift Inktense a little bit as well. But I didn't really struggle with the layers lifting too much below either. It was really just a matter of me managing my water. Really not a big deal at all. Overall, a fantastic product. Super bummed they're not available. And one other thing that I did do is I brought in a colorless blending pencil, which is essentially a colored pencil with no pigment in it. It's just a wax-based pencil that you can use to burnish. So for the areas that I wanted to clean up the edges, but I didn't dare to bring water in because I didn't want to lift the layers below or have to like mix things up too crazy, I actually brought in a colorless blending pencil, and it worked just fine on these. So you don't always have to mix things with water when you're working with a water-soluble pencil, because you can burnish them when they're dry as you would a regular colored pencil. And to me, you know, that's the bonus of having a water-soluble pencil to begin with, is you have the best of both worlds. And I'm just using some regular old no-name Taklon brushes for the most part. I think I do have one of my Holbein Gold because I use those all the time. But for the most part, I'm using some generic brushes from Amazon. I love that these are woodless pencils too. I don't think I have talked about that enough. You get more bang for your buck when you're working with a woodless pencil because the entire thing is the core of the pencil. So especially with a water-soluble pencil, that's a game changer because you can use every part of it other than the paper that's around it. But you just tear that away and it's all usable. So this is my final piece, and I had a lot of fun with it. I can't wait to use these again. Do you remember these from back when they were a thing? If so, did you love them as much as I do? Let us know in the comments below, and I'm glad I nabbed these when I had the chance, and I can't wait to take them out on the road and use them plein air painting. I had a blast with these, and I am super bummed that they don't sell them anymore. There are places that you can get them, and I'll look around and see what I can link below. But if any of you know of inexpensive places where these are still kind of available, let us all know in the comments, because I don't want to have to pay like $18,562 for them on eBay or something. But it would be nice to know if there was a way to get my hands on some more of them in the future if I need to, once I undoubtedly use these up. I will see you next time. You have a fantastic day. Bye.